That's not Street Fighter. About 2 months ago, if you notice on my channel, I had a video of me reviewing the new Arcade 1-Up cabinet. And like I said in that video, I was going to make it a little bit of a hobby of mine and kind of update it and do a little bit of modding to the actual unit itself. Well, as you can see right now, it's running the X-Men main version, whatever you want to call it. I don't know whatever the software term, but it's running X-Men here. It's not the actual arcade unit, the Street Fighter that what it came stock with. So I love it. I think it's really awesome to be able to have a different arcades on one, and I actually really wish that Arcade 1-Up would actually offer either updates or different other things you can actually grab to have multiple games on one single unit versus having to pay quite a bit of money for multiple arcades itself. But again, it was a hobby of mine. I wanted to be able to see how it would be like to update the actual joysticks on it, the buttons themselves, even adding a couple of additional buttons on the bottom here, and be able to have an awesome arcade experience and play some of my favorite games, not just limited to just Street Fighter. So if you guys are curious on actually how to do this is not a tutorial. This is more or less a review of how it actually all works, what some of the complications that I had in actually doing it, and to tell you if you think this is something that you actually want to do yourself, or if it's something that you are not sure about, just want to see how difficult it is. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what I had to do to get this going, so just bear with me for a few minutes. So one of the first major things you can actually notice that I changed out is these are not the stock buttons that came with the actual unit itself, nor are these the actual same joysticks that came with it as well. So for about $50 on Amazon, you're able to get a couple of actually really cool light up buttons, and I really like the RGB style. Well, I take that back. I really like the color style. They're not RGB. Those are more expensive. But these give it a really cool effect, especially when it's in the dark, and able to have a little bit more flair to it, which is cool. And then the arcade sticks that the Arcade 1 came with, a little more or less. These don't feel as cheap as the one the Arcade 1 came with. And then 2 additional buttons on the bottom. Why I had to add these, this is something specific to add in a Raspberry Pi. You're going to need these additional buttons because you don't have enough initially where the Arcade 1-Up. So you normally have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buttons. Originally, you need a total of 8. That's simply just for the actual Retro Pi, where I'm using a Raspberry Pi in there. That's to be able to get to work. This is pretty much what I have to actually simulate inserting a coin to actually play the game itself, and then I got the start button up there on top as well. Alright, let's check out the business end. Now, don't judge for the cable management and whatnot, because there is a lot going on here, as you probably will even already notice. So, as we show you exactly, so what do we got going on here? Alright. So, hopefully this will work there. Alright, so in order to get the actual monitor itself to be able to be an HDI monitor, HDI style connection, where the hell's my Raspberry Pi? My Raspberry Pi freaking fell off. So in order to get it to make an HDMI connection, you need a couple of parts. This is a converter box here that you can get on Amazon. Again, everything that I have in here is going to be linked down in the description below if you're curious on how to do this for yourself, or if you're curious on getting the parts for yourself. So this basically just converts the monitor into an HDMI. I have an HDMI that goes down to the Raspberry Pi, and then I also have a 3.5mm jack that plugs in to this amplifier in order to get it to the stock speaker there. Now, this was about $10. This piece was about $25, and then the Raspberry Pi itself I already had lying around, but if you wanted to get one for yourself, is about $35. And then again, the arcade button itself is about $50. And the hardest part is probably with all of this, and let's see if we can get down to show you guys the buttons for the controller layout. Alright, so we're getting down in here. So this right here. So this is where the hard part actually comes in, and it's not super hard, it's just really super time consuming.
The cool part about this is that these controller pieces, or the buttons for the controller, they don't require any type of soldering. You can get some style of these arcade buttons that would require to actually solder on the wire. These are just little clips that just kind of plug in. If you can see that right over there. And now what all these wires go to, they go to this little micro board here. And then what this does is converts these wires into a USB style controller. That's a USB 2.0 cable right there. And then all these will then plug in to the Raspberry Pi itself. So it's not super hard to do, it's time consuming. The more difficult part actually is setting up the software on the Raspberry Pi in order to get everything working. And then my cable management is atrocious, probably. It's really, really bad. But I mean, this case is being... You're never going to see these wires. So all you're going to have is just, this plastic piece is going to go back on there. So you're never even going to even know there's a rat's nest of wires behind it. Like, I didn't even know my Raspberry Pi was in there.
So, in kind of conclusion, more or less having this as an update, I can't wholeheartedly say I recommend you actually doing this upgrade. It's cool if you can get it working. It took me, and I'm a very tech savvy person, I can say it took me 3 days to complete this project. One, because I kept getting the wrong damn parts. Two, is that I didn't realize some of the other extra parts that I needed in order to get things to sort of work on the RetroPie. It was a giant pain in the ass, but when I did get everything all said and done, I am very super happy with the way that it actually turned out. The hardest part was definitely by far setting up the RetroPie and getting onto certain emulators to work correctly, because the MAM arcade emulators, if you don't have the specific configuration file needed for that specific ROM, it will not work. And I probably spent more time trying to figure that out than I actually did even setting up the actual cabinet from all the hardware. But if you want to invest the time to do it, and you have $250 or $300. Yeah, just as I said that, my camera just freaking died. All right. So as I was saying in conclusion, if you feel like you're technical, if you're tech savvy, you have roughly $250 that you don't really care about perhaps even messing up, because you can fuck up your arcade machine to a point where you don't even have an arcade one-up machine anymore. You just have a giant brick. I mean, I doubt it really. It's not too hard to set up. It's mostly just time consuming. If you have the time and you want to set it up, then you can do and set up this really awesome arcade unit and have it in your own home. But I'm curious to see if you guys, some of you guys, what you did, if you did some modifications, what you did for it. I did say in the past that I want to get additional arcade units. The additional arcade units are going to be more as collector pieces, like the Star Wars one that looked really, really cool. I'm not going to modify that at all. This was more or less my hobby and just things that I wanted to try out. But let me know what you guys think about in the comments below. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to help you out with. James from iRunTech. I'm going to be doing some gaming.